and welcome to my first ever podcast. So every week on a Sunday I will be uploading a brand new podcast, and it's just going to be general chats with me, Kaitlyn, and hopefully I will be able to get some guests on at some point. That's my goal. I would love to have people come on and have chats with me because I love to just have a chat. So I hope people will join in some future episodes, but for the time being it's just going to be me. And I hope you enjoy these episodes. And for today, I'm just going to do a few little topics, but I'm going to first of all introduce myself so you can get an idea of who I am, my interests, and kind of just how I got to this point of starting a podcast. So we're just going to dive into pretty much anything under the sun, as I just like so many things. I have so many interests. I can't just be in a certain niche. My niche is having no niche. Honestly, I much prefer to just be like a blank book and I can just add and do things that I personally like, whether it be my home interior stuff that I really enjoy or gaming. I like to game. And yeah, I just like so many different things. So this podcast is the place where I'm just going to share and talk about everything and anything. If you are like me and you just like something different all the time, you're in the right place. And I hope you will enjoy the future episodes. So I wanted to start this podcast because, like I said, I just wanted a platform where I can kind of just talk about anything and everything. I've been doing YouTube since 2019. I've started making videos and creating content over there. I then joined the Instagram world and then TikTok, and my focus on Instagram and TikTok was home related content, where I would do some styling videos, home hauls, that sort of thing. Lovely. I love my home stuff. That's a big passion of mine. I decided to start doing like week in the life vlogs because I just really love making content. I absolutely love it. So I started doing that, and I'm still doing that, but my videos kind of, from kind of just being specific things each video, it's just kind of varied each time now. Yeah, I really enjoy doing that, but I think having a podcast is just, I feel like it's a little bit different, a little bit more just variety that I can kind of like just talk about, like I said, anything and everything. I did start a podcast, I want to say, the beginning of this year. I didn't quite stick to it. I don't know why. I think this time is going to be a bit different because I'm really, really excited to get going with this podcast. I'm really excited for the coming episodes. I've been really planning. So that's something that I didn't really do last time. So yeah, hopefully this one will stick. So I will talk about quite serious topics in like health issues, because it's stuff that I suffer with. Anxiety is a big issue, big part of me. So that's stuff I will cover, but I also want to have fun and also just have some laughs and just enjoy the podcast. It's just going to be such a variety. Each week will be something a bit different, so, and do tune in to see if it's something that might be interesting to you. So I just reached 40 this year, and I've also been feeling like I've failed at life, if I'm honest. Not to make it sound really miserable, because I do get days where I feel like, when I look at like my age and my current situation compared to others, and that's the worst thing to do, is to compare yourself to others, but it's really hard not to sometimes, especially when you're in the world of social media, and especially when you follow a lot of home accounts, and it's just a whole thing gets into your head and you have to kind of step back a bit. I think I do, and just take a break from it, because it really does get to you sometimes. I sometimes go through these stages where I like to see like all these people have all these things, and then I look at my life and my situation and I feel like I've just failed, honestly. But it's not a thing where it will make me like feel down for too long. I do tend to pick myself up pretty quick, but I do need to have that little break from Instagram sometimes. And yeah, I feel like I'm just constantly fighting on like the Instagram, not so much TikTok. I kind of just do whatever on there, but on Instagram it's like a real struggle to succeed, and there will be people that succeed a lot quicker, and I see that quite often, and that's another thing that kind of makes you also feel you're just not good enough to be doing what you do, because you're not succeeding, and it's just a horrible hole to go down. You don't want to go down that hole, because I've been down it and it's miserable. But that's a whole different thing. But I do enjoy it, and I think that's the one thing I have to step back and think about is, why did I start it? And I started it not to become like the influencer as you kind of labelled now for Instagram, but I did it because I just loved home interiors. I love decorating, DIY, and I wanted to just share it and sort of meet some people along the way. Then it kind of like grew a little bit, then it stopped, and then suddenly I had a big growth spurt on Instagram. And then it kind of went to nothing for a long time. And then it just started going down. So that also made me feel like a bit like I wasn't doing well enough and I just needed to work harder. And then you just have a burnout. I like to say that I think people go through like Instagram burnouts because it's quite exhausting. It's a fun thing to do when you enjoy it. But when you're trying to take it more seriously and do it as a job, it becomes really stressful. Yeah, so I go through stages where I have a little break just to reset my mind to just not think negatively about the things. But anyway, that was completely off topic. I wasn't actually planning to talk about Instagram. So anxiety is a big part of me. It's something I've struggled with, honestly, since I can remember, a long time. And when I really started to suffer with it was when I was in university. I really started having like anxiety attacks a lot. And being around a lot of people, I was finding it very overwhelming. And I struggled to just be a part of groups and just talk in class discussions. I found a lot of things very, very difficult. I had to take some time out. I just, really struggled to just sometimes even leave the house. It gets so bad. And I got through it, but I did really struggle. I did end up having an assessment at university. This was like my late 20s now, because I went to university later in life. I failed school. That's a whole nother story. But I did really love to learn, and I really wanted to have a career in film and media. That's what I studied. And I absolutely loved it. Don't get me wrong. I loved being at university. I had such a great time, and I have part of me now that kind of regrets it, because I feel like I've lost 10 years of my life because it took me that long. With going back to college, doing my A-levels, so on. It took me a long time. But I don't want to try and think negatively about it, because it's done. I can't change those 10 years. I can only go forward. And that's what I'm trying to tell myself, because it's really, really hard to move forward when you're constantly living in regrets and living in the past and just feeling pretty just miserable. I had an assessment. The assessment outcome was that I was dyslexic. So I found out I had dyslexia, and it kind of like, it's like this thing went off, like everything just kind of made sense a bit more now. These things that I've been struggling with kind of like just made sense, because I always kept thinking there's something wrong with me. Why can't I do this like a normal person? Why can't I do that? And I just constantly felt miserable about myself. To have that diagnosis was really helpful, and it helped me a lot more going forward. And I think if I hadn't have had that diagnosis, I wouldn't have succeeded in my degree. I struggle with a lot of things. It's not just the reading and the writing. I can read and I can write very slowly, mix things up all the time. I'm not much of a texter. I'm not much of anything. Another thing that I also struggled at university, I noticed, and I feel like I also struggled with this at school. When it would come around to the class in English, for example, was the worst one, because when we were like reading a book and the teacher would go around and call someone to start reading, my heart would beat so fast, my hands would sweat. I definitely struggled in school with it, and obviously didn't know what it was at the time. And yeah, that was really difficult, and I used to absolutely dread it, because I knew that I could read properly. I was really struggling, and then people would kind of like make fun of you, and you just felt really, really just miserable. So when I went into university and I had to do like presentations and stuff, that was my worst nightmare. When I did have to do them, and I did have to, again, the sweats, the heartbeat, the stumbling of words, I can't read out loud off paper. If I have something in front of me, I can't read out loud. Everything's just jumbled up. It's really hard. So I really struggled. So once I had my diagnosis, it was a lot different, because I was allowed a one-to-one presentation, and obviously they knew my situation, so that was a lot easier on me. As much as I hated it, it was a lot better to do it a one-to-one with the lecturer than in a class full of 50 to 100 people. My gosh, that just sounds frightening. And another thing is, I always used to get very distracted. I used to like to doodle on my books, and this was through university as well. So I find it really hard to sit and listen and focus for such a long time. Anyway, that was university, but yeah, so I did struggle with that, and I had my diagnosis through that, so that was good. But as the years have gone on, I had more struggles sort of come up that I've had, when I think about it, I've definitely had for a long time. I mean, years and years, since I was a kid, I think. And I am now on a waiting list for ADHD. And one doctor I saw was really nice and referred me. Another doctor I saw said everybody thinks they have ADHD, and it wasn't that I thought I had it. I just need answers to the things that I'm struggling with, because I'm kind of going back to when I felt before I had my diagnosis with dyslexia. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do normal things like normal people? Why am I not normal? I have all these things that I think about. So I just want some answers. And anyway, I got put on a waiting list, and then I had a phone call one day and they said, we've had to take you off the waiting list because they had so many people on there. For some reason, they took me off, and I had to fight it to get back on it. So I had this struggle of getting through to the right people and then getting back on this list. And they said, we'll put you back on the list, but the list is a 10-year waiting list. And I was like, oh my gosh, never really going to have any answers to these struggles unless I can go private, and that's not always possible, not for everybody. So it is a case of me having to wait. I mean, I have like huge list, and I think a lot of things can be crossed over with dyslexia, but I think there is a big possibility that I've got the both. I struggle with a lot of things, and like I said, concentration is one. Following directions is another. If I go anywhere, I need somebody to come with me. Like if it's local and it's familiar, I'm fine. But if it's anywhere that I've never been before, I cannot do it by myself. And this is just little things that I've just been jotting down, but I always forget stuff. I can be just about to go and do something will distract me. The littlest thing, like I'll hear a noise or I'll just look at something else, and I will then forget everything that I was about to do. And that's really frustrating, because I knew I was going to do something, I just don't remember what it was. Obviously, anxiety is a big thing that I struggle with, a very big thing. Low mood is something that I've really struggled with in the past, and even still now and then, I still have very low moods. I can have like meltdowns. I'll just give you an example of a recent thing that happened, and that was when in my cutlery drawer something got stuck and I couldn't open the drawer, and it turned into an absolute meltdown. That's all I can explain it as. I felt like I wanted to just burst out crying. I couldn't open the drawer. I was in sweats, desperately trying to open this drawer, and I had to get a screwdriver, and I was trying to just get it open, and I broke the drawer in the end because I just had to just get it open because I couldn't open it. Later found out there was a clip I just needed to release and it would have came off. But in the moment I had a meltdown, and this happens more than I'd like. There's been times where I've dropped a pen or something, or just something really small that shouldn't even be an issue, and I have what I can only say is a meltdown, and that's how it feels, and it's horrible. I hate it because it makes you just feel miserable as well. So that's another thing that I struggle with. I can really struggle with motivation. That's something that has been really difficult on and off throughout the years. I can be really motivated and I can be really unmotivated. It's just something that it's really hard, and I mean, it's really hard to force yourself to be motivated. You kind of just can't do that. It just has to be there. Restlessness. If I'm sat in a waiting room or something, or even just cinema is one that's really hard for me, because I find it hard to sit still for a long period of time without moving. At least if I'm at home, I do kind of move around. My hands, my legs, I tap my legs, and I tap my foot. Or, I'm constantly moving something of my body. Another thing is I can't really concentrate very well on tasks for very long. I hate saying the word bored, but I get quite bored very quickly, and I have to move on to something else. Another thing is in my house, I always have to move stuff around. I get bored with how they are. In the kitchen is the one that's the most, but like moving furniture around, just having change. I always need change, and that's something that's been a part of me for as long as I can remember. I struggle to wait in line, and it's not like an impatient thing. It's a feeling that I get that I'm going to pass out. And if I'm in a supermarket and I have to line up, I tend to just do like the self-checkout as much as possible, but sometimes they don't work and you kind of have to go into a line. I get very overwhelmed in supermarkets especially, and I have to be in and out. Sometimes I've had to line up and I feel like I'm just going to pass out. So that's something I really struggle with. I can't, because I have to stand still, and I don't do well standing still, and it's just a whole thing. Another thing which is really frustrating to me is I do tend to interrupt conversations, and I don't do it to be rude, because I definitely wouldn't want anyone to think I was being rude, because I'm not, but it is a thing that I've struggled with. And I don't even realise that I do it half the time, and it's just really frustrating. Being organised is not something I'm good at. I really want to be, and I just can't seem to be organised. I can't seem to plan things. I'm always late. So there's a lot of things. Social anxiety is one that I've really struggled with as well. Social and health are the two big ones that have just got the better of me. Social anxiety got me really bad last year, to the point where I couldn't leave the house. If there was anybody outside of the house, I couldn't leave the house. I missed appointments. It was really hard. It's such a horrible thing. And I still have a social anxiety. It's not as bad. That's one that I do struggle with. The biggest one is health anxiety. That is the one that ruins my life. It can take over and make me just so miserable. It's unbelievable. It's a horrible thing to have. I won't go into like the details of how it makes me feel, but if you have health anxiety, you'll know what I mean. And another thing, which is the big one, which is the big sort of red flag to me, is the amount of jobs that I've had. I've never been able to settle in a job. I have to just move on to something else. And I honestly, I can't tell you how many jobs I've had, how many courses I've done. There's not enough fingers on my hand. And I always think to myself, why can't I stay in a job? What is wrong with me? I'm seeing people be in jobs for 10 plus years, 20 years, and they're doing really well. They're working their way up in their jobs. And I'm like, I can't stay in a job. I'll never get anywhere in life if I can't stay in a job. Like, that's the big thing for me. It's like, what's wrong with me? And that's kind of like why I'm really enjoying like YouTube and now hopefully my podcast, because it's just such a variety. It's never going to be the same. I need variety. That's kind of why I went to university to do film and media, because I loved the fact that it was so creative. It was different. It was not going to be the same every time. I could move around to different jobs all the time. So it was like, perfect. That's what I need to do. And I really enjoyed it. When I graduated, I took some time off, and that's when I started YouTube, just because I was having a bit of a time out, because I always worked and did my degree, and I had my daughter, so it was just the two of us. So it was really hard juggling all of that. That was tough, but we got through it. The plan was to better our lives. That was the goal, ultimately, so that we had a better life. Spoiler alert, that did not happen. If anything, it got worse. I'm really trying to work my way back up to doing things again. I started working on films that I'd done some screenplays, and screenwriting for me is such because I do, as much as I struggle to write, I can't write like essays, but I love to write screenplays because it's how I want it to be worded. It's how we speak. I'm not being judged by spelling errors or punctuation. So it was a really great way for me to be able to express in writing and come up with all these ideas that I have in my head and just put them down. So I did some screenplays. I've done quite a lot, actually. And I did my first feature film was during lockdown. Before lockdown, I was starting up my film. I was working on my film. I had crew, cast, everything. We were just about to start filming, and then we got shut down. And that's when my health anxiety spiked to the top. And that's kind of why I've never got back into it, because I've really struggled to get back in the world since all the lockdowns. So in the lockdown, I did do my first feature film screenplay, or I think it was my first. Actually, it might be my second. And I sent it off some like screenplay competitions, and it got picked up in Chicago Screenplay Awards. It made into the finals, and I had this email which I was so absolutely over the moon with. I had such great feedback, and I felt so happy. And the opportunity to go to Chicago came up to the Screenplay Awards, and because of all the lockdowns, they had to then cancel all that. My screenplay didn't win in the end, but it did make the finals, and to me, I was just really proud of that. So after all these kind of knockbacks, and then just feeling high in my health anxiety just really took over, I never got back into doing my film stuff, and now I've lost all my confidence in doing any of it. Honestly, I've lost so much confidence in the things that I used to think I was good at, and now I just think I'm not. So this is kind of why then I think the 10 years of the sort of struggle and studying and all that, it's been for nothing, because now I just don't know if I'll ever get into doing it again. Honestly, it's been really hard to kind of come to terms with that and to accept that as well. That's been really hard, because it's just something I really wanted to do, and I just don't know that I'm ever going to get back into it. But YouTube for me and doing what I do, it is good for me, because it's letting me do those creative things, but not what I expected. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I do enjoy it. I'm not doing this because I have to do it. I'm doing it because I enjoy it. And even though I've been doing YouTube for 5 years and it's never really got very far, I do it because I enjoy it. I'm not expecting to ever be very big on anything. I just do it because I enjoy it. So that's kind of like where I was going to go. But obviously things changed and here I am. Now I'm starting a podcast. Happiness is not about what you have. It's about just how you feel. Like, I think my mind, just to have a healthy, happy mind would be all I want. Having a nice house is obviously nice. Having a nice car would be lovely. Going on holiday and those luxuries, these things are lovely to have. But if you're asking me what would make me happy, I would say to have a healthy, happy mind. That's all. Because having a mind that just makes you so miserable and just makes you feel and think horrible things, it's horrible. It takes things away from you. It takes like days, hours, months away from your life, and it's just the time you're not going to get back. I'm really trying to work hard to not let that get to me too bad, but that's easier said than done. I go through the stages where I do pretty okay for quite a while, and then I can just out of the blue be back down to the bottom again. Moving on swiftly. I did want to talk about a TV show which I've just finished watching, and I think it's been quite popular on Netflix, and it's called Nobody Wants This. And at first, I watched the first episode and I enjoyed it, but I didn't get gripped to it. And another thing is, I find it hard to really engross myself in shows. It has to be so good to keep me away off my phone and just entertained and enjoying it. Then I didn't watch any more episodes for a couple of nights, and then I started watching again, and I was kind of like pretty hooked at this point now. So from the second episode, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was such a fun, different kind of TV show, something that I haven't actually seen, and I don't know if there is anything specifically like that. And I just thought it was a really, really fun show. And let me know if you watched that TV show and let me know what you thought. I really love it when I find a TV show especially that I really enjoy. So I'm going to close up today's podcast, and if you're still listening, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and please do subscribe and share and follow me on all the platforms that are linked in the description. Please do. And I hope you enjoy the coming episodes. Now, next week, I'm going to do a little Halloween episode. I love Halloween, and I'm going to just make it a bit spooky. I'm going to ask, actually, if you have any like scary stories, to send them to me somehow on any social. Send me your scary stories, because I'd like to read them next week. Also share a scary story of my own that I went through, and a bit of a ghost story. So I'd also make a list of my sort of favourite scary TV shows, films, not all scary, but some family friendly. And I thought we'd just do a bit of a Halloween spooky episode, and I may even dress up. So please do send me any scary stories or anything that you would like to contribute to the scary Halloween episode next week. I'm excited for that one, so I hope you come back. Thank you for listening or watching if you're on YouTube, and I hope you enjoyed. I will speak to you and see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. Bye.